How's it going, you awesome bunch of bakers? Hope your day is going great so far. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're making spelt flour rolls. So let's get to the kitchen and get started. We have made seeded whole grain spelt rolls before, but back then we used to knead our dough. It is time to convert this recipe to a no-knead one. Spelt flour though does not have the strongest gluten. There are two proteins that form gluten called gluten and gliadin. And we could say that spelt is deficient in gliadin. That means a dough made from spelt flour is more stretchy and less elastic, but that's not going to cause us any issues. Let me show you how to make these bad boys, so you can also enjoy some nice seeded whole grain sandwiches. First things first, we'll need some whole grain spelt flour, some water, some yeast, salt. The sweetening is optional, but I think honey works really well here. It adds a nice flavor, a sweetness, and it gives the crust a nice color too. To make these rolls last longer, we'll use a little bit of oil. The seeds are up to you. I will be using sunflower seeds and caraway seeds. Whether you toast them or not is also up to you. I'll use an egg for glazing the buns to make the seeds stick to them. There are many different glazes you could use. You can find more information about that in the Principles of Baking playlist. When it comes to the equipment, we'll need a tray with some non-stick paper, a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, and a brush. Okay, let's get to it. First things first is temperature control. My kitchen is around 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. We're aiming for a final dough temperature of around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So the water that I'm using is almost at that temperature. Since this is a no-knead dough, it's not going to warm up too much as we mix it, but the temperature will rise by about a couple degrees. Okay, so in a large bowl, combine the water, the yeast, the salt, the seeds, the oil, and the honey, and then give it all a good mix. You want to dissolve the salt completely. This is your only chance to do it properly. Once everything's nicely mixed, add the final ingredient, the whole wheat spelt flour, then mix it to a dough. My previous spelt roll recipe actually contained a little bit of wheat flour. I used it for extra gluten, and I guess that was mainly because the dough was a nightmare to knead. It was so sticky. The no-knead method solves that problem. We will develop this dough by just giving it a couple of folds. You may ask, why are we using spelt flour? Why don't we just use whole wheat flour? I'm not much of an expert, but they say that spelt flour is better for you. And I guess I can confirm that to an extent. I am actually gluten intolerant. When I eat a lot of wheat flour bread, it gives me rashes. But spelt flour, not so much. And of course that's just my personal experience. It could be completely different for you. And definitely don't think that this is gluten free. That's far from the truth. But if you are intolerant, try it and see how it affects you. Okay, handle this dough with wet hands, otherwise it's gonna stick. Get it in a clean bowl and take its temperature. Around 25 degrees is what we're aiming for, and we got close enough to that. Okay, cover it up and pop it in the fridge for 30 minutes to cool down. This is of course cold fermented, as with most of my recipes lately. After the first 30 minutes of chilling, let's give this dough a fold. We do need to develop the gluten a little bit. And you already know the drill. Dust your dough with flour, pop it out on the table, flatten it out, fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until you reach point where you started, then flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, pop it back into the bowl, that's your fold done. If you don't want to cold ferment this dough, if you don't want to wait, simply leave it out to bulk ferment for around 2 hours. But you might want to give it an extra fold then. If you are going to cold ferment, 2 folds will be enough. So put the dough back into the fridge, chill it down for another 30 minutes and give it a second fold. And the second fold works exactly the same as the first one. But just look at how different the dough looks. After we mixed it, it was extremely loose and it was tearing very easily. It was not cohesive at all. Since then, only 1 hour has passed and we gave it 1 fold. And now this dough feels completely different. It is not sticky at all, and performing the second fold is extremely easy. I could have even done it without dusting it with flour. Okay, second fold done, pop the dough into the fridge and leave it to ferment for 12 to 24 hours, it's up to you. But of course the longer fermentation will produce a tastier bread. And just look at that, this thing's puffed up beautifully. It is full of gas, it's ready to be made into some rolls. I'm gonna be making 6 large rolls, and I mean it, they are very large. So if you don't want gigantic rolls, divide the dough into 8 or even 10. Alternatively, you can make a loaf out of this. It will go perfectly in a 1.5 pound or 680 gram tin. But regardless of what you do, after dividing, pre-shape. And even if you're making a loaf, pre-shape that too. It just gives us another chance to build some tension in this dough. And of course you know the drill. Flatten the dough, fold the edge over the middle, keep going around in a circle until you have a nice tight ball. This dough is still quite moist, so there's no need to cover it whilst it's resting. Unless you have wind blowing in your kitchen, don't worry about it. Leave the dough balls to rest for 20 minutes before performing the final shaping. And it works exactly the same way as the fold and the pre-shape. Give the table a very light dusting of flour, place the dough with the smooth side down, flatten it out, fold it over, keep going around in a circle until you reach the point where you started, flip it smooth side up again, tighten it against the table, and finally you can pick it up and pinch the seam together at the bottom. Place your dough ball in a non-stick paper-lined baking tray and continue with the rest. Once you're done, make sure to clean down the mess. The dough balls must have plenty of space between them, because they will puff up and spread out quite a lot. Final proofing time will be longer than resting time, so this time you really want to cover the dough up. And just for reference, my kitchen is still at 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Final proofing for me took around 1.5 hours. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat your oven to 160 degrees Celsius, fan on, and that's 320 Fahrenheit for my American friends. These things have puffed up beautifully. If yours haven't, just leave them for longer. Now one thing I would suggest, dust your dough balls with flour before covering them with cling film. You saw my cling film stick just a little bit, and the roll that it's stuck to will tear open at the top as it bakes, as you will see later. Okay, glaze your dough balls and then sprinkle them with seeds. And here I wanted to try out a new method. I'm using a pastry ring as a stencil, and it's not really for looks. It's mostly because most of the time when I sprinkle the seeds on, half of them end up on the tray. And I thought this way most of them will stay on the bun, which they did. And I'll definitely be using this method again. But no matter which method you use, after sprinkling your seeds on, press them down gently. This will ensure that they really stay stuck to the surface. Okay, these bad boys are ready for the oven. And because they are relatively big, they will take a little bit longer to bake. In my oven, they took me around 30 minutes. As many of you will know, my oven does not have the bottom heating element. So I think most of my bakes take a little bit longer than they should. But you can always judge it by the crust color. Once it's nicely browned all over, they're ready. Pay attention at the middle roll on the bottom. That is the one the cling film stuck to. It's not a big deal, but it's worth knowing. And there you have it. That is how you make whole grain, no-knead spelt rolls. It's a very simple little recipe, but the result is great. They look awesome, encrusted with the seeds, the color is beautiful, they have a nice shape, they have a nice soft texture, and of course they taste fantastic. Whole grain spelt has a sweet nutty kind of flavor, and the honey works really well with it too. And of course the seeds complement it even further. You can always play around with the recipe and adjust it to your liking, but I'm pretty happy with this one. So what do you think of this recipe? Have you used spelt flour before? And what's your favorite wheat flour alternative? Let me know down in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this one, click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.